Shana Tova, Happy New Year, everyone. We were talking this morning. Do you ever remember rain on Rosh Hashanah?
No.
I don't either. It had us all in a dizzy. Well, I want to just take a minute to wish each and every one of you a happy and healthy new year. I invited him to services. Move fast and break things. This is the advice of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. You see, it's his philosophy for the new world we're living in. And it's not just his, not his alone. The technological and economic forces of this 21st century are causing all of us, our whole society, to rethink some of our most cherished ideals and institutions. This is the result, sociologists and business leaders tell us, of the disruption economy. We've seen disruptions in every aspect of our lives. Politics, art, business, media, even how we have and find relationships. Everything's changed. Everything has been impacted by technology. The political realm is perhaps the most obvious because we're bombarded every single day by another headline. Our current occupant of the White House is an example of disruption. He campaigned differently than what was typical for politicians. You never know what to expect with him. His policies are born out of disruption modalities. Turn everything upside down and do it really quickly. Don't do what is expected of you. And his administration is changing the lives and disrupting the lives of many people. But it's also important to look at how it's done. Where do we turn for the latest policy initiative? That's right, Twitter. 140 characters, not words, characters. In the not too distant past, we relied on policy papers and think tanks. But today, we find ourselves reeling from moment to moment, waiting for the next Twitter pronouncement. And the Twitter feed itself is often with its anonymous posters and computer bots, in turn churn out fake messages that shifted our conversations as a nation and attack and troll people. Lies are promoted as truth, and that has become its own industry. Fake journalism is indeed something to be wary about, and fake news is everywhere on Facebook and Twitter and on numerous websites masquerading as journalism. And fake news, sadly, comes from our government officials as well. You see, all of them are examples of the disruptions with which we now live. Even art has been affected. The music industry was one of the earliest to take a hit from these disruptions. As documented in his book, Move Fast and Break Things, How Facebook, Google, and Amazon Cornered Culture and Undermined Democracy, author Jonathan Taplin at USC documents the move from records to CDs to MP3s and how it caused deep havoc for composers and musicians. What once was a $20 billion, with a B, billion-dollar industry in 1999 is now only $7.5 billion. A precipitous drop that began with the appearance of Sean Parker's Napster and enabled users to download music without paying for it. You see, this disrupted the normal course of the music business and allowed counterfeiting and piracy to soar. Coupled with the easy way we could share music with just a few clicks of your mouse, and consumer expectations then rose to say, oh, well, we can get something for nothing. We don't have to pay for it. All of this is eaten into the music business. And the same can be said for film and television and graphic design, other arts, and other businesses. Everybody that provides what's known as content. Even how we hail a ride has changed, right? Once you hailed a taxi. Now, Uber and Lyft, driven by your neighbor down the street. See, technology has changed the way we get and share content, how we do business, and changed the basics of how we live and work. So let's take a look at business in general. Been to the grocery store lately? Not as many checkers because we scan our own barcodes. How about donations? Much easier online than writing a check or paying your bills that way online. How about basics, parking, right? LA, parking. Used to go to the mall and there'd be a nice person sitting in that hot booth. Today, just a card in the machine that doesn't take cash anymore. It's only credit or debit. You see, there'll be further disruptions to our lives and to human beings as robots and automated systems and driverless cars increasingly replace people who had those jobs before. And there's going to be more disruptions to come in our lives. Amazon first smashed the book business, putting out of business your local bookstore. Then it went on to remake the retail business, bringing any item to your doorstep with a few clicks of the mouse. Malls, which once were shopping meccas for America, sit empty all across the United States. Brick and mortar stores cannot compete with Amazon and the convenience and the prices. And now Amazon seeks to transform the grocery business because it acquired Whole Foods. Just you wait, my friends. Product availability will narrow, and farmers, they're going to be further affected. See, Google and Facebook are ever present. They can track your every movement and your every conversation. Google Home and Alexa listen to your every wish, make your playlist of music, add to your shopping list, all conveniences, but they can listen to your conversations as well. Even as you click through your friends' Pinterest accounts, for similar clothes are going to appear in your feeds. And with so much personal information available online, well, we've seen what happens. It can easily be shared with the NSA and government, and has been, as these large internet companies often have little regulation. And in this information age we're living in, the golden key, the golden apple, is data mining. It's the key to success for both hackers and large corporations, creating a lack of privacy if you ever had it. And what about, let's look at relationships, how we form relationships with one another. Now we swipe left or right for a date or a playmate. We upload our most perfectly retouched photos and seek out former loves on Facebook. There's benefits to all of it. I grant you that. We can reconnect and stay in touch with family and friends, be part of their lives at great distances. We Skype and FaceTime with our grandchildren or our kids away at school instead of some disembodied voice at the end of a phone line. Those are good things. But even so, as we post more and more personal information about how we feel, there really is a false sense of intimacy. It's highly edited and curated, sometimes to the point of being a lie. For the Jewish world, these disruptions have also influenced and affected us greatly. It's caused the synagogue to grapple with profound changes and patterns that are ancient in this new environment. And so maybe you've noticed some adaptations in here in our own congregation at Kol Aviv. Traffic has impacted our ability to get around. We here in our city live without adequate public transportation, as well as a culture that resists switching to what we have. And so for many of you, it becomes a burden to even get to synagogue, no matter where it is located, because fighting traffic leaves one so frazzled. And so now what do? We live stream our Friday night Shabbat services in the hopes that using technology will bring services to you in your location. We'll hope to bring community to you where you are, if you'll avail yourself of it. See, those are the kinds of changes and developments in technology also affect how we train our kids for religious school and for Judaism, even how we have meetings to run the day-to-day workings of the temple. But you see, there is a cost to all of this. For the synagogue, for our relationships, for business, for art, for people. And these costs, I believe, have a profound effect on our society. Not only are people displaced from their jobs and their lives with industry changes and technology, I believe that the very definitions of community come into play and question. And some people are questioning whether or not these kinds of changes that we've all lived with now affect the very fabric of our own democracy. Such as when data mining can be used to manipulate elections and manipulate algorithms that influence your newsfeed, that will influence your decision-making. This is the process that changes what you see on your Twitter or your Facebook, your Snapchat or your Instagram feed. Even the way the news is influenced on cable or in the digital press. They've been shown to influence your decision-making. There are examples of how Facebook did this actually over a 2-week period in 2016 before the election. These disruptions and potential for manipulation and rapid changes are difficult to adapt to and more difficult to guard against. These disruptions to the way of life we have known are difficult because we human beings haven't really changed. Many of us have a hard time keeping up and managing all of these forces that are so natural to our kids and to our teenagers. But they're overwhelming our day-to-day lives because we can't even open a Google document at work. And further, we all want to believe and know that the decisions that we make are our own decisions, not manipulated by some large corporation. You see, in Judaism, we believe that we have the choice over good or over evil. Our tradition teaches us that we each have a Yetzer HaTov and a Yetzer Hara, a good inclination and an evil inclination. Our tradition teaches us that we can give in to the evil or we can choose our Yetzer HaTov. And it's this time of year, at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that are meant to help us reflect on the choices that we have made and will make in the year to come. The High Holy Days are meant to help us examine our moral failures and give us hope that we can renew ourselves and renew our Yetzer HaTov. With the arrival of the new year, we have a moment now to pause and reflect, to gather our thoughts in this fast-moving world. Ironically, it is our ancient spiritual tradition that I believe can provide some profound guidance for how to manage in these disruptive times with all of these challenges. And so this morning I'm going to share with you briefly 3 ancient pieces of wisdom for living and thriving in this disruption economy. And I want to show you something else, how Judaism itself has always been a disruptor to society, but in a good way. First, the most important thing you can leave here with this morning is take time out. The constant 24/7 of our lives, of always being at work and always being online, destroys the quality of human life. It destroys our health and our well-being. Being online can be an addiction itself. Do you turn and kiss your spouse in the morning, or do you grab your phone? One of our core principles of Judaism is Shabbat. Shabbat is actually the very ancient antidote to this fast-paced demands of business that can sometimes care very little about you or your family life. Shabbat is the ultimate gift of Judaism, part of the covenantal promise that God made with us at Mount Sinai. Shabbat is day of rest and day of wonder, a day of gratitude, a day of thanksgiving for your life. But unless you take time off, unless you make Shabbat sacrosanct in your own life, I guarantee you will succumb to the larger forces that run your life without your consent. And you will not be a free person. The great philosopher Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote in his great book, but small book, but great book, The Sabbath. Gallantly, ceaselessly, quietly, humanity must fight for inner liberty, to remain independent of the enslavements of the material world. Inner liberty depends upon being exempt from the domination of things as well as the domination of people, he wrote. There are many who have acquired a high degree of political and social liberty, but only very few are not enslaved to things. You see, Rabbi Heschel understood that our true freedom and liberty comes when we aren't dominated by things or people in the material world. And Shabbat is a way to disrupt the disruptors who want to control your decisions, to control your thinking, to control your purchases, to control your pocketbook. You see, Shabbat is the pause for the overwhelm of the world that we feel today. Shabbat is the antidote to being online. Put your phone away. Turn it off. It needs a rest too. Take a Facebook break and actually disconnect from the World Wide Web to gather, listen to this, your own ideas, your own thoughts, not influenced by algorithms, by fake news, by propaganda. So I'm urging you this year to take the Shabbat challenge. Put your phone away for 24 hours. That's all. Don't tweet. Don't post food porn. Don't take selfies. Connect in the real world with the people you care about and who care about you. You see, Shabbat, as we understand it, as liberal and progressive Jews, it's a day to love, to be outside, yes, to meditate and pray and give thanks, to acknowledge your blessings. Literally a day to restore your breath, the God who lives inside of you. So let Shabbat be your tool, your gift, to disrupt the pace that you're fervently living at and uplift your spirit in a world of chaos. Number 2, the second key for living in this world, for living in this chaotic times, is to live a life of Jewish morals and ideals. The Mishnah, Rabbi Hillel, said this: in a place where there are no humans, strive to be a human. In meaning, when the world is so ugly and people are behaving poorly, we should strive to be a mensch. Now, it's not as simple as it actually sounds. It's easy to succumb to what's happening around us, to get caught up unintentionally in destructive behaviors, and even easier still to remain silent when others are behaving badly. And if we hide our heads and don't speak up, well, then we are complicit in what's going on around us, in the simple evils that creep away and eat at our lives. You see, society, I believe, and Judaism believes, depends upon treating one another with honor, with respect, with dignity, to be a decent human being. The temptations to act like the crowd are huge. to take advantage of others, to disregard human life, to enrich your own wallet at the expense of others. You see, these are the kinds of behaviors we are seeing all too clearly in our world today. And yet Judaism has long taught us another set of values and ideals through our mitzvot, through our commandments that teach us to act differently than running with the crowd. We're taught that we're all created b'tselem Elohim, and we are made in the image of God. And we're taught that for a reason. Because when you look at another person, you're supposed to see in their eyes, you're supposed to see God in their eyes. And they're supposed to see God in your eyes. We have to treat one another with dignity and respect and honor. For when we honor our fellow human being, we honor God. So I'm going to teach you my favorite story in the entire Talmud right now, because it is one of the most important stories, and I hope that you'll go back and study it. It's the story of two men, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and a third man and some rabbis. And the story is told because it tells the reason, the rabbis say, for the entire destruction of Jerusalem during the Roman period. Because of what happened in this story. A certain man had a friend named Kamsa, and he had an enemy named Bar Kamsa. He once decided to throw a party, and he sent his PA out to go and invite him. Go bring Kamsa. Except the assistant went and brought Bar Kamsa to the party instead. When the host found Bar Kamsa enjoying and eating and drinking at the party instead of his friend Kamsa, the host confronted him. You gossip about me, you tell tales about me, he said. What are you doing here? Bar Kamsa said, please, since I'm here, let me stay. I'll pay you for my own meal. You won't cost you a thing. The host said, I won't. You're not staying. Bar Kamsa then sweetened his request and said, please, I'll give you half the cost of the party. Just don't embarrass me. Let me stay here. The host wasn't hearing any of it. I'm not doing that. You're out. Bar Kamsa then sweetened his request and said, I'll tell you what. I'm going to pay for the whole party. Let me write you a check right now. The host said, absolutely not. And the host was growing angrier and angrier with every moment of this interchange. And finally, the host grabbed him by the hand and threw him out of the house. Bar Kamsa was humiliated and said to himself, since the rabbis were all sitting there and did not stop him, this shows they agreed with him. I'm going to inform the government against them. And so he went to the Roman emperor of the time, the governor, and said to him, the Jews are rebelling against you. The Roman emperor replied, well, how do I even know that's true? How do I trust you? Kamsa said, listen, let's do it. I have a test. We'll do this test. And so send them an offering for their God and their temple, and see whether they'll offer it on the altar. So the Roman governor sent a fine young calf with Bar Kamsa to go to the temple to make it as an offering. On the way to the temple, however, Bar Kamsa actually injures the animal, right? Slashes him in the lip, causes a blemish, or some say poked him in the eye, because we had to offer things without blemish, right? Now, for the pagans, the Romans, that kind of blemish wouldn't have mattered. They would have just offered the calf. But for Jews, the calf had to be perfect, right? So, Bar Kamsa takes it to the temple. The rabbis were now debating, what do we do? It's from the Roman emperor. Do we offer it and keep the peace, even though it's not kosher, the animal's treif? What do we do? They were in a dilemma. Once again, though, they were going to offer it, and they were going to be quiet. But then one among the rabbis spoke up and challenged them to say it was inappropriate. And just because it came from the Roman governor, they couldn't offer it. So then the rabbis had a dilemma. How are we going to get out of this situation? And they started to talk among themselves. And what came out? We'll kill Bar Kamsa, because he's the one that got us into this dilemma. and there became a whole conspiracy. And so, for all of these reasons, Rabbi Yochanan taught us, our house has been destroyed, our temple burnt, and ourselves exiled from the land. Now, this is an incredible story, and I want to emphasize it's a story. But it teaches us what happens when we let our anger get away with it from us, even when somebody has done something wrong to us. You see, the host of the party humiliated Bar Kamsa in front of everyone, even though Bar Kamsa said awful things and gossiped about him. But the host could have handled it differently. Bar Kamsa offered to pay for his own meal and then for the party. Maybe it was a gesture of goodwill, an act of atonement on his part for speaking out of turn. But you see, even that gift couldn't have been accepted by the host. And the rabbis, they're really at fault in this story, because they don't speak up. They don't speak up when there's immoral behavior going on. They don't tell the host to calm down and be a mensch. The unintended consequences of our anger, and in the story of the host's anger, and Bar Kamsa's anger, you see, it sets something terrible in motion. It's so much strong, that anger and that rage, that it even destroyed the central institution of our lives, the ancient temple in Jerusalem. You see, the whole story teaches us that holding on to a grudge can bring down the core institutions in our lives. That being cruel and inconsiderate, even if someone's gossiped about you, can have unintended consequences. And that is what the rabbis are trying to tell you. Anger destroys. So instead, strive to be a human and be a mensch, always. So I want you to think about where our country is at this moment. Can we even talk to one another anymore? Think of the trolling that happens online, the ways people are attacked over and over again for their positions. Think about the way we react when someone holds a different view than we do. Do we just write them off completely? Think about when you hold your own anger at someone for so long. You know, it eats at you most of all. And it has unintended consequences that perhaps you don't even see. Think about policies that don't uphold human dignity. You see, we can use our better selves, our Yetzer HaTov, our good inclination to strive to live by the ideals, to treat people fairly and uplift their dignity. That is what Judaism teaches. Our entire Torah is written with that emphasis. To be fair in our business dealings, to be fair to the worker, to welcome the stranger, to honor our elders, to help couples begin their lives together, to teach our children well, as Crosby, Stills, and Nash said. Rosh Hashanah reminds us that despite our sins, despite our failures, we are not finished products, that we can change the course of our behavior and ultimately the life of the world. And if we can do this, if we can model this and actually treat people who are different from ourselves with kindness and with love, then it will be, as Dr. King taught, we can create a beloved community that will transform everything, because love will conquer hate. And finally, the third piece of ancient wisdom from Judaism that can change the quality of our lives and disrupt the disruptions. And that is for all of us to become Rodef Tzedek and Rodef Shalom, one who pursues justice and one who pursues peace. The psalmists teach us these words: seek peace and pursue it. And our Torah says, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice. Pursue justice. Our tradition demands of us to walk in the ways of Tzedek u'mishpat, justice and peace. not watch from the sidelines, not wait for God to send it down from heaven, but to actively work for it, to work and make it happen. You see, our role models are the prophets of our tradition. Isaiah, Amos, Micah, and Jeremiah. They cried out in their day when society was off the rails, when there was corruption among the officials, and they carried a message of God's truth and justice to our covenant, loyalty to our covenant. The prophets of old taught us that God doesn't want your pious platitudes. So if you've come here today to pray with all the words and sing with the cantor and think that's enough and you've done your job, you can go home now. I won't judge. Because that's not really what God wants. We're here to sing and pray with each other. What God wants from you, and what the book of Isaiah teaches us, and that we're going to read on Yom Kippur morning, that Kevin's going to read for us from the book of Isaiah. He is a regional vice president for our entire youth region in NIFTY, North American Federation. And he is, what position is his vice president? The social justice, the social action position. And he's going to read the text from Isaiah that says, "Is this the fast that I want?" God says, "No. What I want for you is to clothe the naked, to feed the hungry." In other words, create a society not of religious details, a society that cares for one another and is based upon the principles of fairness, ethics, and morality. And we Jews, according to our tradition, have been and must remain a light to the nations of the world, an or l'goyim. Because the light we shine when we act with justice and dignity and pursue peace and be a rodef shalom and a rodef tzedek, it brings illumination to dark corners where evil lurks. One way we illuminate the world is through the justice we pursue and the justice we bring about by shining light on the ugliness and the inequities that are sometimes the result of human interactions. You see, we don't have the luxury of burying our heads in the sand when so much is at stake in our world. We don't have the luxury of ignoring the signs of our times. We can be the light that changes the world. As Anne Frank taught us, it's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I share that with her. I share that inside of every person is a kernel of goodness. But our society wants to cover that up and to mask it. And the Jews' task in this world to pursue peace and justice is to help uncover that kernel of goodness in ourselves and in those we come into contact with. At Kolami, we make a difference. Our new Tzedek Council, our Justice Council, has begun its work to help keep alive goodness in our world. As a Jewish community, you can be a part of it, your families, and we can make a difference with one another. And as a country, we can make a difference when we act with others and treat others with respect and dignity. To change the world, we must begin by changing ourselves. Let us commit in this new year to being the light of peace, the light of justice, the light of goodness, the light of fairness, the light of menschlichkeit, the light of hope. Because then this new year can really be for us and for all the world the new year of change. And we can be the light. Can you hear us? So may it be God's will.